Verse of the day, Sunday, January 4th, 2026. Colossians 3 verses 9 to 10. Do not lie to each other, since you have taken off your old self with its practices and have put on the new self, which is being renewed in knowledge in the image of its creator. The ethical imperative of renewal, deception versus truth in the new self. The Apostle Paul's exhortation in Colossians 3 verses 9 to 10 presents a profound ethical framework for the nascent Christian community, one deeply rooted in the concept of transformation. The passage commands believers, do not lie to each other, since you have taken off your old self with its practices and have put on the new self, which is being renewed in knowledge in the image of its creator. Let us examine the significance of this passage by examining the antithetical relationship between lying and the process of spiritual renewal, emphasizing how truthfulness serves as the inevitable consequence and evidence of transformation into the image of the Creator. This statement is more than a mere prohibition against falsehood. It functions as a foundational directive for communal integrity, linking personal identity reformation directly to interpersonal behavior. Deception in the new self often means clinging to comfortable lies or false narratives, self-deception, to avoid painful reality, while truth involves confronting uncomfortable facts for genuine growth, even when it means changing ingrained beliefs or behaviors, a process sometimes aided by spiritual frameworks that offer a higher source of truth over self-created illusions. The new self emerges by recognizing self-deception, denying feelings, rationalizing, as a defense mechanism and actively choosing honesty, even if it's difficult, to align actions with authentic reality and personal values. Comfort and avoidance, lying to yourself to feel better, avoid responsibility, or escape painful truths about feelings, motives, or circumstances. False narratives, creating justifications for bad behavior or clinging to rigid beliefs that aren't true, e.g., all people are bad. Spiritual deception, using scripture or religious ideas to justify denial rather than finding genuine truth, or believing you must perform to be worthy. Psychological defense, an unconscious refusal to acknowledge reality, often rooted in low self-esteem or a fixed mindset, making you your own enemy. Truth in the new self, confronting reality, acknowledging uncomfortable truths about oneself, even when it demands change. Source of truth, seeking truth from reliable sources, potentially spiritual ones like Christ, rather than self-serving falsehoods. Psychological strength, developing the fortitude to admit reality and the willingness to change, moving beyond what you want to believe. Authentic growth, rejecting flattering lies for difficult truths to achieve genuine liberation and growth, understanding that true self-improvement requires seeing things accurately. To truly embrace the new self requires an active rejection of the inherent deceit characterizing the old self. The journey to a new self involves recognizing your own self-deception, a key first step, and making a conscious, often difficult, choice to embrace truth, even if it's lonely, for deeper freedom and alignment. The old self and the practice of deception. The old self, described by Paul, is inherently connected to practices that distort reality and fracture human relationships. Lying, in this context, is not an isolated sin but a symptom of an internal state estranged from divine truth. In the ancient world, as in the modern, deception served purposes ranging from self-preservation and manipulation to maintaining societal hierarchies built upon falsehood. When an individual operates from the perspective of the old self, lying becomes a default mechanism because it reflects a fragmented understanding of reality and one's place within it. The practices associated with this old identity, which Paul lists elsewhere as including malice, anger, and slander, all rely upon a distortion of truth, whether through omission or fabrication. The act of lying demonstrates an attachment to the self rather than to the Creator, prioritizing personal gain or comfort over objective reality. Putting on the new self, the renewal in knowledge. The transition demanded by the text involves the deliberate act of putting on the new self. This is not a passive inheritance, but an active undertaking sustained by continuous renewal. Crucially, this renewal is achieved in knowledge in the image of its Creator. This knowledge is ontological. It is not merely accumulating data, but understanding truth as embodied by God. Since God is fundamentally truth, any alignment with the divine image necessitates an orientation toward veracity. If the core identity is shifting to reflect the Creator, then the fundamental mode of interaction must shift from obfuscation to transparency. Consider the implications for community ethics. In organizational studies, trust, which is built upon reliable communication, is the bedrock of efficacy. The early church, striving to create a radically alternative social structure based on shared belief, required absolute trust. Lying amongst believers would undermine the very structure of their shared life. A lack of truthfulness immediately signals that the new self has not yet fully displaced the old, indicating stagnation in the renewal process. For instance, in contemporary examples of organizational crisis management, the immediate collapse of public trust following documented dishonesty illustrates the pervasive damage caused when the foundation of truth is compromised, mirroring the necessary integrity within a spiritual community. Truthfulness as the fruit of divine imaging. The imperative not to lie thus becomes the practical test of the spiritual transformation. If the new self is being renewed in the image of the Creator, whose nature is truth, then the individual's speech must mirror that nature. This mandates a commitment to honesty in all interactions, transforming communication from a tool for manipulation into an instrument of relational building. This ethical demand extends beyond mere factual accuracy. It requires sincerity of heart. Speaking the truth in love, as articulated elsewhere in Paul's writings, suggests that even difficult truths must be conveyed with the intent to build up, never to tear down, maintaining the spirit of the new creation even in moments of confrontation. The ongoing renewal ensures that as knowledge of the Creator deepens, the practice of truth becomes more instinctive, less of a forced adherence to a rule, and more a natural outflow of one's redefined existence. Conclusion. Colossians 3 verses 9 to 10 provides a powerful theological bridge between identity and behavior. The shedding of the old self and the assumption of the new is immediately evidenced by the abandonment of deceit. Lying represents the gravitational pull back toward a self-centered existence. Conversely, commitment to truthfulness signifies participation in the divine process of renewal, positioning the believer to reflect the Creator's nature within the human community. This ethical requirement is not peripheral but central to the Christian experience, demanding constant vigilance as the new self matures toward its intended perfection. This suggests that achieving a desired state of perfection is not a passive or automatic process, but one that requires continuous, active attention and commitment. This idea aligns with various self-help and spiritual philosophies that emphasize personal responsibility and the power of consistent habits in shaping one's character and future. Perfection here is likely a metaphor for reaching one's full potential or a state of ideal self, rather than literal, flawless perfection. Wish you all a very blessed and a joyful Sunday. Nusray and Nazarene.